So Strongpoint gets installed, and we're going to go out and create a new customization detail record for every individual metadata component that you've got on the platform. We'll list out all of the related objects for you. We're going to give you a high-level overview of the metadata, things like date last used and when it was first created or last modified and those kinds of things. We'll get down to the raw data so you can actually get into like the XML that we've scraped. But then what you're also going to see is that we're capturing change logs. Probably one of the most valuable features of the Strongpoint toolset if you are publicly traded. So whenever a change happens, Strongpoint's going to run, it's going to pick up a diff, and it'll create a time-stamped, date-stamped record. So this is CL25325. Actual change date, like I said, timestamp, date stamped, whoever originally created the customization, whoever actually modified it last for this purposes of this change log. We create a diff summary for you in a few different formats. So you can see kind of red value, green value for new and old. We'll export that and just summarize the specific changes for you there. We also show it to you in a full side-by-side if you need it. And so this is really the root of our reporting. And you can see here that on each individual change log, there's a compliance indicator. So what this is telling you is, did this violate a control? And so in this case, yes, it did. The policy that applied was just our default policy, and this was a non-compliant change. We needed a full software development lifecycle, and we didn't get it. Right, so there's no proof of an approved change request. And in this case, there's no proof of like the approval to build and the approval to deploy, basically, right? And that's all logged on these change requests individually. And so what that means is that you can then report against these. And so that's what our change reporting is really based off of, right? So we'll pull all of our change requests or all of our change logs that we've created. We'll show you the dates that they were all created, a quick summary of the actual change that took place. So the customization name that was changed, the type that it was, a quick summary of the change. So whether it was something that was changed or just created for the first time. And we'll also show you a diff summary. So I showed you on that change log view how we export little small details for you. That's really what shows up here. Now, I'm going to come back to this change log here. So you can see that this one was non-compliant. And so it was non-compliant because it required a full software development lifecycle because this change violated the default policy, but it didn't get it. So if something did violate a control, but it did have an approved change request in the system, that would be a green flag. And so I showed you on the what change report here, most of these are all red, right? You've got some green ones down here. But what a change log could also look like. So here, this is a report that we filtered a little bit. It's showing you a series of customizations. These are all compliant. This was just from one release. And here, for example, what we did is that we pulled in the external change request number and added that to the report. And so this is showing that this change request, so the Strongpoint change request, was actually created from a JIRA ticket in the first place. And so this is how we've been able to kind of automate someone's JIRA reconciliation. So change request was created in JIRA and then referenced into the Strongpoint ticket. The Strongpoint ticket got approvals before the changes were actually made. The changes were made, we reconciled them all back together, and here you are, right? And so the idea, I think, behind and circling back to the kind of the original root of the webinar here, this fork in the road, your simple changes can be treated like simple changes. They don't need the complex process behind them. They don't need the approvals, the technical resources, so on and so forth. They can be made quickly, and they won't be non-compliant because they haven't violated any of your controls. You're making changes to layouts or dashboards and list views and things like that that don't have complex dependencies. Whereas your more complex changes, you will recognize immediately that they do require that process. They require those approvals, so on and so forth. And so they can go through the right process before changes are actually deployed. Therefore, also getting a lot more green flags instead of red flags. And so that's kind of the purpose behind that. So when we think of or when Strongpoint thinks of how to automate change management or how to perform intelligent change management, I think the root of it is really, it boils down to understanding exactly what you're changing and how a change of that type should be treated. And if you can differentiate between different types of changes and have, processes to support them that are appropriate, then you're in a really good place, regardless of what your DevOps or CI/CD process looks like or what other deployment tools you may have. You'll be in a good place just because changes get the appropriate level of attention.